In this video, I'm going to help you understand the difference between traditional small to medium business acquisitions and the smart way to buy these businesses. And I'm going to go through why it's important, why this is the golden opportunity over the next 5 to 10 years, and actually how you can take advantage of this once in a lifetime opportunity with something called a roll-up. So if you don't know who I am, if you're watching this, you're wondering, who is this guy? My name's Josh Lee. I'm the founder of JC Health Group. I'm building the next leading national clinical healthcare group in Australia. And alongside that, I am teaching everything I know and what I continue to learn as I execute the plays myself. Now, prior to this, I was a banker and consultant. I've been involved in over $100 million in transactions, and I've got clients all around the world. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. I've got my little whiteboard here, online whiteboard, that I can map some things out for you, give you some visualization. Now, the traditional way to buy businesses. This is how most people have done it over the past century. Or centuries, maybe. I'm no historian. But anyway, most people, when they think about buying businesses, they think, I have to use my own cash, you can see that, yeah, to buy, I know this is a house, but for this sake, it's a business. I need to use my own cash to buy a business. And what people are really looking for is, this is the cash that I'm investing, and I'm looking for a ROI, return of investment, or even a return on investment. Right, so let's say you buy a business for $1 million. Hopefully, you get an ROI, and whether you get it through recurring annual profits, recurring revenue, or you cash out for an exit, and hopefully you get more than $1 million plus. Right? Fuck, I'm terrible with this whiteboard, but you get the point. So that's the traditional way. Now, what's the problem with this picture? What's the problem here? The problem I see is that you're using your own cash for one, right? So which means you have to work for it. You have to earn that money. Or you're using investor money. So you have to go to work, or monies that you've earned through, investments or from other ventures, right? Or you're using investors. And with investors, it typically means you're giving up equity. So rather than you having 100% piece of the pie, you're actually giving your investors a piece of the pie, because that's what most want, right? A lot of investors don't just want some money back. They want equity, they want some kind of control in the business, and they want to get a return. They want to get a return on their money too. Now, let's say you're exploring bank financing. Now, traditionally, people will, with bank financing, the bank is going to ask for a cash equity contribution. They're going to ask for a piece of security, aka your assets and your property. And they're also going to look at some kind of personal guarantee. Some kind of personal guarantee, right? So they're looking at money for you to contribute to the deal. They're looking at taking a piece of your property or your assets to secure their money in case shit goes wrong. They can always just go, boom, sell your house, give us the money back. And they're also going to ask for you to sign a personal guarantee. So they're going to look at your income, your liabilities, and ultimately say, hey, I want you to sign and say, if you can't pay the loan back, let's say if you don't want to sell your house, that you are responsible for paying us back through your other endeavors. And this way they're going to look at your income, they're going to look at your employment history, your track record, basically. So this is the traditional way. Everything you say is the traditional way. You're using your own money to buy business, hopefully looking for a return of or on investment. You have to work and save to earn that money. And maybe you're using investors where you're giving up equity to buy the business. And if you are a smarty pants, you go to the banks to borrow and leverage more of other people's money. They're also going to look at what's your equity contribution, how much money are you putting into the deal, and they're going to look to take a piece of your assets, aka your property, and they're also going to get you to sign your soul to say, yep, I'm going to give you the money no matter what. Assuming shit hits the fan and you've got to reach that point. So that's the traditional way. Now, what's the smart way to buy businesses? And this is not necessarily the modern way, but this is how many, many billionaires have made their money. So rather than using your own money, right, you're using something called OPM, other people's money. And when you're buying businesses using other people's money, you're not necessarily looking for an ROI, because you're doing something called an LBO, right? An LBO. And with an LBO, a leveraged buyout, you're buying equity using debt. Right, so a different diagram compared to this one, right? Where you're funding something with your own cash and expecting an ROI. Down here, we're buying equity using debt, using other people's money that we pay back. So basically, you're getting in on the action without putting your own money into the deal. Now, why is this model much smarter? Obviously, no money down. This way, you don't need investor money, so aka you're not giving up away any equity. And when it comes to presenting to the banks, rather than presenting on why do I keep drawing this third arm? People have two arms. Anyway, we're presenting not on your individual strength, but on the strength of the deal. Right? The cash flow and the assets of the business that we're looking at. Okay, so how does this work? How is this a smarter way? How do you buy business without putting your own money into the deal, using other people's money, getting in on the action without putting up the hard bucks out of your own pocket? Okay. One, you're using debt, primarily debt, right? That is the leverage buyout model. So you're looking at businesses that are already profitable, already established. And why is this the golden opportunity to buy these kinds of businesses? Now, if you've never heard of it, we're going through a golden opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity right now in 2025 and for the next 5-10 years, something called the silver tsunami. The silver tsunami refers to the millions of businesses all around the world that are owned by boomers. Boomers looking to retire with no one to take over their assets. And because there's no one to take over their assets, it's up to bright entrepreneurs like yourself watching this video to get in front of them and say, hey, do you want to sell your business? I will buy your business and take it off you so you can liquidate, so you can get some money for the hard work that you've put in and enjoy your retirement. Now, a lot of these businesses are like doctor's offices, radiology practices, landscaping services. The people who own these businesses, their kids don't want to take over. And a lot of the employees, they in most cases, they don't want to give their employees the business. So what are they going to do? On the higher upper end of town, right? So for the larger businesses that are maybe like 10, 20, 50 million plus, this is where private equity is going. So everything under there is referred to as the lower middle market. And this is where the golden opportunity is, because no one's looking at it. The big guys with the deep pockets, they're not really concerned about the $1 million, $2 million, $3 million business. So here's the opportunity for a private individual like yourself to go buy them. So this works across the board. If whether you're just starting, whether maybe you're working a 9 to 5, maybe you're unemployed, maybe you're a freelancer, or even if you're already in business, maybe you're one of these people who have just started a business. Maybe you're in trucking, you're in construction, you work for yourself. Maybe you're already in one of these traditional industries. This is a really good opportunity for you to expand your business by buying your competitors or buying someone who's been in the game and just doubling, quadrupling your revenue every single year just by buying out companies. Now, how would you actually do this? So you're using debt, right? You're using debt. You're using the free cash flow and the assets. You can see that? Yes. Free cash flow and the assets of a business to structure deals so you can get other people's money to fund the businesses. So primarily, let's say you're going to go with a bank. You're going to use bank money. When you present deals, rather than presenting on your personal circumstance, so like what I've drawn up here, where a bank will ask, when you walk into a bank and you say, I've got a business to buy, for any average person, they're going to ask, okay, what's your equity contribution? Do you have property? Are you going to give a personal guarantee? Rather than doing that, we're going to the bank and saying, hey, we've got a business that has free cash flow, that has X amount of cash flow, that has X amount of assets. We require this much, and this is the equity contribution. It depends on the way you present to the bank, and this is something I teach in my academy. I teach to my clients. So I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of it, but I'm going to show you the principles. So maybe you can figure it out and apply it for yourself. So you can start buying companies with no money down, using bank money, using private lenders. So this is the model, right? Most banks will fund anywhere between 50 to 80% of a purchase price, a market value purchase price. And then they're going to ask for equity, an equity contribution. Rather than putting up your own money, rather than putting up your own house as security, rather than putting up your own personal guarantee, what we're going to do is vendor finance or vendor rollover. And what we're going to refer to this as is seller's equity. Seller's equity. So if you've never heard of vendor finance, that's basically an IOU to the seller. And vendor rollover is basically you're leaving a piece of the pie for the vendor. So whether you're doing an asset sale or a share sale, let's say you're buying a company, you're buying a portion of the company and you're leaving a portion for the seller. Right? So let's say you buy 60% of it, the bank is willing to give 60%. You leave 40% for the vendor. You can use one or a combo of both of these. Right? It really depends on the deal, depends on the industry, depends on the bank's appetite. It depends on a few factors, but these are essentially the two key things that you're going to use to fill that equity gap without putting your own money on the line. Now, the reason why you get away without putting your personal guarantee in and your asset security up on the line is in the way you present it. Right, so rather than walking into the bank and say, hey, please, I need money, you're actually going to present it in a very professional way. And again, I teach this in my community and to my clients. But the rule of thumb for you watching this video is don't just walk into a bank and ask for money. Right, you have to present a case where you're providing two key things: quality of earnings and maintainability of earnings. Quality of earnings, maintainability of earnings. That's what the banks are. This is what is critical to the bank's assessment of the deal. So the key difference when it comes to the lending, as I said, under an LBO, you're using the strength of a business. The strength of a business, it's free cash flow, and its assets to secure money. Whereas the traditional way, you're using the strength of your equity contribution, your asset security, and your personal guarantee to secure the money, right? So it's very personal based under the traditional way. The smart way is to focus on the business. Now from here, I want to show you how you can actually apply the LBO to create lots of money. As I mentioned, this is how a lot of billionaires in the world have created their wealth, through the LBO and through something called a roll-up. So how does that work? How can you start doing this? Now the LBO, you're buying companies at 3 to 5 times EBITDA, right? EBITDA is earnings before interest, depreciation, tax, amortization. 3 to 5 times. You're getting equity for with debt, and over time, you're actually reducing the debt, right? And increasing your equity value. Now, the roll-up model basically is choosing, let's say you choose one particular industry or a niche, and you buy many, many businesses within that niche, you integrate them, you consolidate them, right? And then you sell to a private equity or strategic buyer. So depending on industry, you buy companies for 3 to 5 times, and then you basically do this multiple times, let's say 10, and then you sell it off to PE or a strategic buyer anywhere between 8 to 15 times. Right? That's what we call a multiple arbitrage. So you're buying companies at 3 to 5 times, and then you're consolidating, integrating them, and then you sell to a larger player for 8 to 15 times. That's the multiple arbitrage. So I'm just going to show you some quick maths to help you understand the power of, how simple it is in terms of the finance and understanding like how much money you can make deploying this model, implementing this model. Let's say we buy 10 businesses at $1 million EBITDA. Fuck, that looks terrible. Anyway, 10 times 1, that's $10 million. Let's say you have $10 million in EBITDA. All right. And assuming, I'm not going to get into the full details of each one, but let's assume that we got 100% debt for them all. So we got, from the banks, we got $10 million. Sorry, no, we bought all these at a 5 times multiple. So our debt pool is $50 million. So let's just assume it's all bank debt. We've got $50 million to buy $10 million worth of EBITDA. Now, 5 years later, let's say we've reduced this debt amount and we've grown these businesses. So let's say we've reduced from 50 million down to 35 million in debt. And then we've also increased our portfolio EBITDA from 10 million to 15 million. Right? Because you don't just want to buy a business and let it sit. You want to buy a business and grow them, right? And over time, you're using the free cash flow of the business to pay down the debt that you got to buy the businesses. Now let's look at the exit. So let's assume an average of 10 times, right? A lot of private equity and strategic buyers are buying these consolidated groups at 10 times EBITDA. So what is that? 10 times the 15 equals 150 million. $150 million. Now, $150 million, let's say you make the exit, you've still got to pay back this money, right? That you owe to the banks. So 150 minus the 35, what are we left with? We have $115 million. Assuming you're the 100% sole shareholder in this portfolio of companies in the holdco, then this goes into your pocket, right? You have just made $115 million starting from scratch. Right? So you bought your first business at $1 million EBITDA. You bought 10 of them using pure debt. Nothing out of your own pocket. Using pure debt. All right. Give it 5 years, you've reduced that debt pool to $35 million. You increase your portfolio EBITDA to $15 million, and some big player has taken notice of you, thrown an offer at you for 10 times your EBITDA. Boom, $150 million valuation. You pay off the banks, and what are you left with? $115 million in your pocket, assuming you're the sole shareholder. Now, why is this so great? Obviously, you haven't invested any of your own money, and under this model, using debt, you don't need investors, you don't need to raise capital, right? You don't need to raise capital and give away equity. So there's little to no equity dilution. And there's really no other vehicle that I can think of or have ever seen where there is this kind of arbitrage, right? Whereas this, where was it? Where you're buying companies at a 3 to 5 times valuation, and then selling the entire group at an 8 to 15 times valuation. Now, if this isn't crazy, I don't know what to tell you. But this is the model that I think is the golden opportunity of a lifetime right now, 2025, over the next 5 to 10 years. You've got millions of businesses all around the world who are owned by boomers who want to retire with no one to buy their business. You can step into the breach and say, let me buy your business. These are my terms. Take it or leave it. You take over these companies, you own them, you consolidate them, and then boom. There's so much money out there, right? These big players, they don't want to, as I said, they don't want to deal with the $1 million businesses. They want to deal with the big bucks. Right? They're pooling investor money and they're looking to deploy as much of it as they can. They're going to look at groups like this, where you've got 10 of them, and they're going to slap a premium multiple and give you a fat payday. So this video, hope it gives you some insight into the traditional way of buying a business versus the smart way to buy businesses. And this is an example of how you can implement this to create massive wealth. And in terms of the golden opportunity, you've got millions of businesses all around the world who are ready to sell. You just need to get in front of them. So hopefully you can start implementing this advice. You're gonna go take some action, and hope this helps. Thank you for watching.